Hey, I'm Roy Harmon, and this is the Hot Pursuit podcast. Today, we are joined by Lifecycle marketer Sascha Hoffmann, who's going to share a lot of insights with us. Sasha, can you tell us a little bit about yourself before we get started?
Hey, yeah, thanks for having me, first of all. Yeah, a little bit about me. I'm originally from Germany, as you might can tell by the accent. I started my marketing career about like 8 years ago. I actually moved out to the States to do a master degree there. Started working, a little detour, went to London, worked there a little bit in the marketing space, and then came back to the States. And for almost 3 years now, I'm running my own consultancy. It sounds always so big, but essentially, I'm a lifecycle marketing consultant, as I like to call myself. Yeah, I'm basically helping clients, generating more demands, capturing them, getting them through their like buying stages, and hopefully get more business.
So, Ian, I know you've talked other places about how life cycle marketing is kind of just a fancy term for a pretty fundamental marketing concept. Could you break down what you mean by that? Just make sure we're all on the same page.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, I mean, I think it's probably a fairly new term. Like job titles always need something new. People have something for LinkedIn, I guess. I mean, at the end of the day, I always say it's just good marketing, right? It's like you have marketing at every stage of the customer journey. It's not fragmented. It's like a holistic approach. Um, and I think the bigger a company gets, the more different departments you have, different people who take care of different, yeah, stages. And I think it really comes down to attracting people to your website, to your landing pages, to your brand, whatever it is, capturing that demand, then converting those people at some point into becoming customers by nurturing and whatever steps necessary, and then grow them from there, right? So it's all about the long-term goal is increasing customer lifetime value, and hopefully, what I say, like to say is like, if you move just like every tiny like stage, improve a little bit, every conversion rate between the steps, make it better, like at the end, your ultimate business grows exponentially.
So, and when you're thinking about those life cycle stages, how granular do you get? I mean, do you, because theoretically, I guess you could kind of get just microscopic if you wanted to, but what have you found to be the most effective?
Yeah, I think actually, I mean, yeah, it depends on the business, right? For certain people, like even within like, the proposal stage in opportunities in very complex B2B world, you might have 30 different stages you actually need to distinguish. But I think if you can boil it down to, I guess I like to do it like in the 5 stages, like not just awareness, consideration, and converting. I like to think about someone is problem unaware, problem aware, solution aware, but not product aware, and then most aware, right? If you think about it as like maybe in a marketing world, in a CRM system, maybe people don't know that they need something better than what they have. HubSpot is, for example, always a good example in how they treat content and whatever, right? So they have the like content about the most generic terms, like what is a CRM system, what is marketing automation, like dominate the SEO game in that, and then they basically go down further and further, and then like at the end, the most aware is like where they have the knowledge bases, like how to do X on the platform, right? And you want to cater to each and every one of those different audiences. Yeah, I think that's my usually my approach to do this thing. Then of course, if there's always one very underlying issue for one of the stages, you can obviously break them down even further. But I think bigger picture, if you just treat it in those 5 stages, I think you are good.
That's from what I've seen. That's a adding in that unaware uh, stage is not as prevalent as I would have expected. I'm just I felt like pretty much always felt like you need that just kind of to build up your funnel in the first place. And part of that's because I have usually worked with category creators, people who are very new to a new
Mm.
space, people that didn't even know what it was. And if you don't have that initial content that just identifies people who are going to be in your target audience, it can be really difficult to generate any sort of audience that's big enough to remarket to in those more
Hun-
higher intent phases.
100%. And even, I mean, sometimes it gets really tactical at the end, right? So if you think about what I just mentioned with the HubSpot example, the usually the largest search terms within any category are always the ones about what is, like the very generic ones. At the
Mm-hmm.
end, like something very specific, you don't really have like, search volume. You don't have even an audience you can address. And like sometimes you need those SEO wins, for example, in order to even, that Google considers you for all the money keywords where it's like, best for X. I mean, of course, the company doesn't really usually write best for X or something, but to have just some money keywords, how I name them, like what you maybe like have for your Google ads, in order to win those in the top positions of organic ranking, you got to have first some SEO wins, right? So
Mm-hmm.
sometimes you have to go just for generic stuff, even though they will not generate you any business in the short term and in the short side view.
Right. And even, I think even if it doesn't generate really any traffic, it can still be beneficial just in terms of relevance and building out that internal link structure. What would you say for somebody who's just starting out with with their marketing strategy, and they want to get them, they like this idea, they want to do life cycle marketing. Where would you say they start? How do you decide what to prioritize? Because I can
Mm.
see how, on the one hand, it's like, well, let's try to build up a really big audience and let's work at that really top end of the funnel, or let's go ahead and let's generate some revenue and start at the bottom of the funnel. Uh, I would imagine it's probably pretty dependent on your goals and things like that. But are there any guidelines or things to think about when people are trying to make that decision?
Yeah, um, it is the classic marketing answer, right? It depends. I think what's your quickest wins or biggest pain points, right? So if I have a massive database, I generate a ton of leads, but I don't convert them, or my sales process is so fragmented. I don't know, like then maybe the nurturing, like maybe a really good email campaign is the first thing you should focus on to get people like engaged, walk them through the funnel, especially when you say like you have a new category. People don't even know what's the next step. They might be interested in a topic, they subscribe, like they give you the information, and then the biggest problem is you'll leave the lead behind. Maybe that's the
Mhm.
biggest problem. Maybe it is you don't have enough website traffic. You need to get more people on the very top of the funnel. But usually, most times when I start working, it's capturing demand. It's like always a short term and a long term that can work together, right? So you do so your Google ads, you optimize it, you go for the keywords that are actually relevant. Often it might actually mean that you have less leads but better leads. Maybe you pay even more for leads, but the quality increases. Sometimes it's like the just tweaking a little bit what's already going on, but in a way that drives the business. You have your short-term wins, but then also maybe set up yourself for success in long term. Like for example, you don't have much SEO content on your site until you create content, you review it, you publish it, and until actually Google, gets you some traffic, this takes 6 to 8 months, 12 months eventually, right? So I always try to do some quick wins first, but also focus on the long term. But I think it's important to see the funnel as a whole. And if you change one of the stages, like if you just double the traffic, you double your revenue, or even does it grow somewhere exponentially? But at the end, you want to tweak at every stage at least a little bit. So yeah, you make the most out of it. And it also really depends on I think often not every product or solution is searchable, right? I mean, now I just came off from like Google Ads or SEO perspective, but especially in the B2B world, like every marketer knows they have an attribution problem, right? No one says, oh yeah, I measure everything perfectly, or my workflows, everything is perfect. I don't need another tool to manage my content or whatever. But that might be a perfect place, for example, for LinkedIn, right? Where you push people the information like in their face and they start learning more. But it's also there, you can't just say like, hey, here's something, let's have a sales conversation about it. You also need to create the awareness about it, like basically have the same 5 stages of the customer journey just within there, and again, and walk someone through. Like you need to do this thinking for them. Like you can't assume like, oh, I show them a problem, now they jump to the conclusion that they need a solution for that. You really need to, yeah, walk them through the whole process.
Well, so getting more tactical, would you say that for every company, it's you kind of are starting over and looking at, okay, let me see what are all the tools available. This is we're going to do this, we're going to do that, or do you have sort of a toolbox? Do you have some go to channels that generally are the best places to start? And what would those channels be? And are they better for some stages than others?
Yeah, I mean, what I just described is, I guess, the ideal world, right? Where I have also visibility into everything. Most times, reality is someone comes to me and says, like, look, I want to do SEO, I want to do Google Ads, I want to do, I need help with LinkedIn ads, I need help with marketing automation. It's most likely a little bit fragmented in that way. They have a specific need, or at least they think they know they have a need for certain things. It's often not wrong, but sometimes it's maybe not be the biggest mover. Um, but generally I try to analyze what's going on and then see what's the biggest win or the biggest potential, right? So if they come to me and say like they want to do LinkedIn, I always try to at least get the information, like what are you doing on the Google Ads side, especially if someone really just wants LinkedIn for lead generation, um, especially those with smaller budgets. It's always sometimes better to just really optimize some lower hanging fruit, like people with intent first. So yeah, usually I try to go first in those where it's easier, like lead capturing. Google Ads is always the top of mind there, right? Someone looks up a solution, they are ready with a credit card. Like
Mm-hmm.
let's get those people first, and then let's try to generate demand and with people putting the information, who are not looking up information about it, who are not looking up a specific solution, who are not looking up a specific product. Those people, let's get them to it, like through, for example, LinkedIn, or through good content marketing, partnerships, whatever it might be.
And what do you generally recommend for those stages that are a bit higher in the funnel? Because I think that there are definitely some challenges at the bottom of the funnel, obviously, and they can be pretty difficult challenges, but I feel like most people kind of get those challenges, and they know, well, we need to get a guy for this, or somebody's got to figure this out. But as you move up the funnel, I think that it sometimes gets a little more strategic, a little more difficult to figure out, okay, where do I even start? So what guidance do you have for people when they're in more of that demand generation phase? They're thinking about brand awareness, get people aware of the problem, that sort of thing.
Mm. Fantastic. I actually really love it because I always try to get to a conversation like this. What's the actual value? I'm a numbers guy, right? I mean, I like to follow the money, and also where the opportunities are. And I think if you break this down, right? I mean, and that's, for example, if people do the bottom of the funnel already, they're good. They know, look, I'm going on Google Ads, I pay X amount for my leads, that translate into X amount of opportunities, and then X amount of business. But I know that they might not be the companies, the clients that are best. I potentially can 10x that revenue per customer if I just go for my you know ABM list. It's also, again, a fancy term essentially for your target list, right? So in that case, I think what I try to outline is the numbers, and then if the numbers make sense, right? So just by benchmarks, really, right? I say, like, look, if you have 2,000 visitors to your website, if you have, I don't know, like a LinkedIn campaign, and even if your cost per click, because your audience is so niche, is $30, but basically really calculated back to, if you spend 10,000 here and we just follow the benchmarks, that will return into, $30,000, $500,000, whatever it might be. That makes it a little bit easier for people to understand, especially then if you think about, in the SEO world, that certain tactics, they are good for a long time, right? Google ads, if you spend, or excuse me, any ad, if you stop spending, you stop getting the leads, right? With other tactics like SEO, content marketing, you just put in the system, and then it runs and it builds upon, it actually grows exponentially, so you actually get more out of your buck over time. Of course, you can't just fully stop it, but yeah, so I hope it answers your question. I really try to outline the potential, what it could be, and yeah, like, try to allocate a little bit of budgets towards top of the funnel. Maybe one very interesting thing about it is, if you ever talk to, for example, LinkedIn, how they treat their big clients. If American Express or something goes to LinkedIn and says, like, hey, let's run a campaign, what they're going to do is they say, like, let's spend 60% of the resources on the awareness, 30% on consideration, and 10% only on converting. And I mean, I guess if you look at any major corporation, that's probably how they treat most of their budgets, right? I mean, Coca-Cola spends a lot on sponsorships, on whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, I'm not going to say that the plumber next door should spend a lot of on awareness and brand building and whatever, but I mean, it works for them, so there must be something behind it, right? So yeah, sometimes it's getting the buy-in and the long-term thinking, um, and not also a lot of expectation management, like not just expect, you know 10x website visitors as soon as you publish 5 blog posts, and then also as soon as they're live, not to have 10 new clients.
Well, so, and when it comes to budget, do you have a sense for how how big does the budget need to be able to target the full cycle, the full life cycle? Is there, uh, you know, let's say that it's a company that they need to focus on generating revenue, so they're going to start at the bottom. Do you have any? Are there any rules of thumb when it comes to figuring out? Okay, you need to spend at least this much here, or
Mm.
there's just no point
Yeah.
spending anything, and you can't really move up to start spending here in the middle of the funnel until you have this much uh, budget to allocate. Any kind of guidance
Mm.
there?
Yeah. I mean, most of these tools, they give you a good forecast, right? So I just break down, like, I always do this reverse engineering, right? And I just break it down, for example, for LinkedIn, right? The cost per click costs anywhere between $6 to $12 for most people. If you're super niche, it can go down 30, up to 30 or whatever, right? But let's even assume a cost per lead is between $100 and $150. Most likely, what I'm referring on LinkedIn is not even a sales lead; it's more like a marketing lead. Someone download a white paper, infographic, attends a webinar, something like that. So $150 cost per lead. Like, in order to make anything work, you need at least $1,000 for LinkedIn, right? If small companies come to me
Mm-hmm.
and, like, just without below 1,000, usually it doesn't make sense. You don't get the clicks, you don't get, it's not worth to do it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because even then you have the lead, so you need to do the next steps. How many of the leads convert to sales opportunities? How many of those to customers? So it doesn't add up. And on the Google Ads, I mean, there are campaigns where you can start with as little as, I don't know, $15 a day. I mean, I did a short campaign for myself as, like, an SEO freelancer. I only spend like $15 a day, right? It really depends, but it's like I just went for, I didn't need the numbers. I just wanted to get the right ones. So my my keywords were very limited. So instead of getting a lot, I just wanted quality. So yeah, it works in different ways, and it's really depending. When it comes to stuff like SEO, is like if someone says, oh, we are in a competitive space and we need backlinks or whatever. I mean, you need a budget then of like $3,000 or something, right? Other than that, it's like
Mhm.
you don't make any dent. You can still do certain things. I think you can, at any budget level, you can do something, and there's always the best. Sometimes the best answer is, however, wait, don't do anything for 3 months, save that money,
Mhm.
and then do a 3 months campaign and see how it works out, right? So
Right. Yeah, it's hard to it's hard to say what the future value of SEO will be with all these um, advances in generative AI and all that. It'll be interesting to see where those go. I would almost be afraid to invest too much without understanding what's going to happen to uh,
I I actually
the
think that,
search results pages.
I mean, now two opinions. If you have a third person, we probably have four different opinions in here. I actually think that the AI is a big opportunity for people to do SEO right. So the barrier to entry is just way lower, right? People can do, sure, they can create the content and it's easy, but I don't even refer to that. But it's like keyword research, like understanding different search intents, optimizing certain parts of it. Maybe get like two Q&A questions written by an AI, not the whole thing, getting an outline, right? So doing the stuff that a lot of SEO people do, I think are now on the fingertips to like average Joe, I want to say, right? Sure, there are people that will misuse and create it, but I think now it's actually, maybe in the short term, you don't see as many good results as someone who published 100 AI content pieces and you just do five. But in the long term, because your content is really good, it helps people, it's what really Google wants. In the long term, you will succeed there, right? So I think that AI is a good opportunity if you use it as a tool and not as like your content output.
Well, so one additional thing that I hope will happen is that through using these tools themselves, meaning like Google using Bard or Bing using ChatGPT, if they can, or GPT, if they can use that to actually do a better job of determining intent, whereas, I mean, the one thing that I would love to have happen in SEO is less of a reliance on backlinks. And that way, it's like marketers don't have to figure out, like, can I buy backlinks? It seems like I have to buy backlinks. This website has 1 million backlinks, and I know they didn't get those naturally. Um, but I mean, then they could potentially, Google could use AI, I would hope, to then say, like, this is what this person is really wanting to see. Whereas right now, I think they kind of have to take a broader approach, and they're not going to get down to the very specific article that's perfect. uh, so, in a way, it would kind of spread the traffic out a little more, to where if you write the perfect article for a certain person, it's going to be more likely to be surfaced. Hopefully, that I think that would be nice to see. What do you think about retargeting? Where does retargeting fall into the come into the equation? How is that a must-have from the beginning? Is it something you can wait for? When do you slot that in?
Yeah. In all honesty, I don't actually use it often. It's most likely, it's also like, where is the budget going in the best possible way, right? It also really depends, another classic marketing podcast answer, on the sales cycle, right? So the classic example is like, if I buy a shoe, I buy this shoe probably within the next 3 days, and it's like, either you see an ad for the shoe now or never, right? So most times I'm in the B2B world. So it's not that necessary that a display unit or something follows you around, right? um, but on other things, I think the shorter the sales cycle, the more important it is. Um, However, I think, if you have a way to do sequential storytelling, which essentially is a way of retargeting, that's the best strategy you can have to actually get the people throughout the funnel. And it's not always from one stage to another. It's like even within this, right? Someone is looking up very informational stuff, you give them the next idea because they don't know what they don't know, and you slowly move them
Right.
along, right? And there retargeting can play obviously a fantastic role. Also, it really depends on the data you have, right? So, and how you use it. If you just do a generic retargeting campaign because someone lands on your Google Ads landing page, I think it depends on your sales cycle. Sure, example, if
Hmm.
it's very short, you have to be there because either it's with you or your competitor. If
Right.
it's longer, maybe not so much. But if you have something where, like on an informational SEO piece, someone
Hmm.
likes looking up certain, I don't know, statistics for some data or whatever, and then you have the next logical step. Now someone looked up information A. What is the next logical step that gets them to your next stage? Maybe you have a retargeting piece that gets them there, that does the thinking for them, like something that's almost dumb not to click, right? So I think that's where we need to go. Like you have it really, I don't want to say personalized. It doesn't have to say, "Hey Bob," but like in a way that it's
Right.
relevant, contextual relevant in, yeah,
Well, yeah, I
fitting
think
my,
that well, like you're talking about with that informational content. I mean, that's I think a really great basic level of personalization, and can be really helpful in increasing sales velocity. Get out there, if you've got a longer sales cycle, have some material out there that you're serving through ads or emails or whatever, and kind of answer some of those questions as you go, and see if you can't speed things along. Mention consequences, mention things that sort of motivate them to move on to the next phase. What about, so how do you feel about segmenting audiences? Is there especially on LinkedIn, do you feel like there's like how small is too small, I guess, and how big is too big when it comes to that?
so I guess it's also like at the end it really comes down. LinkedIn is maybe it depends on the goal of the campaign again, right? If it's an awareness campaign, you need some volume, right? If it's already like down a little bit further, so maybe like very tactical, maybe we lose a lot of people right now. But on LinkedIn, for example, you have the opportunity to retarget within the platform. What I mean by that is, like, for example, if you have a video, you can re-engage people who watch that video to 25%, 50%, 75%, or 97%, right? So if I basically do my targeting parameters of, I don't know, I want to have all C-level people at Fortune 500 companies, right?
Right.
And I serve them in a video ad. They watch it to 25%, they engage with it a little bit, and then I serve them the next, maybe another video. Like it can go on and on and on, right? So in that case, in this sequential storytelling, maybe at that point I also add my website pixel to it, like someone who has engaged with me, maybe someone then who also my overall visit my LinkedIn profile, right? So basically, I build a retargeting pool within, and then based on certain actions, right? Maybe from the website pixel, I only take it from informational blog posts, right? So then it's this sequential storytelling. I walk people through this. I do the thinking for them. I serve them one piece, and then what's the next logical step, the next best action? Um, you keep them within the platform usually, and then it's like awareness, consideration, converting, like the LinkedIn funnel stages. Yeah, you in that case, basically in that case, I would do as large as possible the first audience, and then just honestly very targeted the second one, because I don't want to have just target people with consideration stage based on their job title. If they have never engaged with me, it's kind of wasted.
Hmm. Okay, perfect. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. That's really been a great conversation, and I think that you've been as insightful as I hoped you would be. I really
Thank
appreciate it.
you. Thank you very much, and pleasure to
And
be in touch.
where can people connect with you or learn more about what you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, people can connect with me on LinkedIn. I also write a marketing blog called Back to Marketing School, and my own website is called Scuba Marketing. Long story why that name, but reach out and I will tell you.
All right. Thank you very much, Sasha.
Thank you. Appreciate it.